Leah Wiste. She's been on the staff of Michigan IPL since 2013 and has been executive director since December 2018. She's deeply invested in advocating on behalf of our sacred living earth and all of its creatures. She identifies as a seeker and believes people of faith and conscience have a critical role to play in bringing us into right relation with earth and with each other. Leah has a BA in Women's Studies from Carleton College and an ABD in Cultural Anthropology at the University of California, Davis. When she's not fighting climate change, she's weeding her garden, buying more books than she'll ever read, and trying not to get electrocuted while renovating her house in Detroit's North End. The second speaker is Leah Tessman. She's the Director of Grants, Corporate, and Faith Relations at Habitat for Humanity of Huron Valley, facilitating partnerships, funding, and volunteers to support Habitat's work to serve low to mid-income families and individuals in Washtenaw County with home ownership and improvement programs. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. How's it going? All right, so I'm Leah Wiste, two Leahs. You'll have to, work to keep us apart. But I'm going to be talking today about climate justice and a little bit like, what is it and how do we do it, right? And I think it's a relevant question for those of us in the room who are white middle-class folks. How do we do that? And I think this is really important in this moment. So just a little bit about me. I grew up in Minnesota, Wisconsin, lived a bunch of places before coming to Michigan in 2011. And because I work at a multi-faith organization, I like to share that I'm a recovering Catholic, a seeker, but I really appreciate wisdom from all kinds of traditions. And for me, it's interesting, thinking about how do I orient to the world of sustainability. It kind of mirrors transitions I made in my faith journey, right? I grew up in a church that was very concerned with being good and doing the right thing, and it encouraged me to think about sin in a very individual kind of a way. And I think a lot of our environmental training kind of maps onto some of those things. It's very individualistic. It's very, how do we do good? How can we obsess about our personal sustainable practices, right? And there's a broader, bigger way to look at that. When I first joined Michigan Interfaith Power and Light back in 2013, climate was one issue of many that I was concerned about, and it's really kind of, for me, just started to be the big issue, the big umbrella that touches everything and that is kind of bigger than everything. So I've been working there for more than 10 years. I became the executive director in 2018. The title of my talk was, how do we do climate justice? Is anybody brave enough to hazard a definition of climate justice? Or offer an idea about how we might do climate justice? Anybody? Zero people. Somebody's got to have some idea. Jan.
Listen to people who are different than you, different in religion, race, economic level, etc.
So Jan, say
learn from them.
Thank you. So Jan is saying maybe it has something to do with listening to people who are different from you, different race, different economic background, and you're going to try to learn something from them. That could be part of a definition. Hey, Denise.
Hey, everybody. Center those in the front lines who are most impacted in any decision making.
Denise says centering those who are most impacted by environmental troubles in the decision making. Do you want to add something? Was it Jaron?
Yeah, just that as we make a transition to cleaner forms of energy, that people and communities aren't left behind.
Yeah, so Jaron said, as we make a transition into more sustainable energy, we're going to make sure nobody's left behind. Yeah, these are all really great perspectives. Thank you for that. So possibly you're not going to learn anything from what I have to say after this. That could happen. So I wanted to share, in our faith traditions and our wisdom traditions, we do a lot of learning through stories. So I wanted to start with a story. And that is, we were hosting a conference in Detroit. It was one of our big sustainability conferences that we, before COVID days, used to do annually or every other year. And so we were having a workshop. I wasn't in the room at the time. We were having a workshop about solar energy. And this fellow, Pastor Calvin Glass, was in attendance. And the panelists were talking about, here are some successful solar projects that were done. And I think actually the solar project that was done here at Genesis was on the panel. And some friends of ours were talking about power purchase agreements and how that was a mechanism that you could use for a nonprofit or a tax-exempt entity to get the 30% federal investment tax credit, right? So kind of wonky, kind of complicated. And so Pastor Glass did an amazing thing, right? He got up to leave because he was like, I don't get all this jargon, right? Here's a well-educated guy, has a bunch of degrees behind his name, and he was like, what is all this jargon? I don't get it. And also, price tag on these solar panels is really high. This is out of reach for my congregation. What am I doing here? This is not serving me, right? So one of the panelists was able to kind of check in with him as he was headed out to say, wait, what's going on? We'll work with you. We'll try to figure this out, right? And so he decided to stick around for the conversation. We'll get back to him in a couple of minutes, but he's since joined our board of Michigan Interfaith Power and Light, and he's been helping us think about how do we do better as kind of a legacy, kind of white middle class organization. How do we do better at being more genuinely inclusive and leaning into climate justice? So I wanted to kind of historicize a little bit the environmental movement. Van Jones gives us a framework for kind of thinking about shifts that have happened over time, and kind of it can maybe provide us a bit of a compass for how do we orient ourselves differently going forward. And by the way, you're going to see some links in here, and I'll provide my slides to the conference organizers so that you can follow up with these links later if you like. So Van Jones talks about three main waves of mainstream environmentalism, right? Conservation, early 20th century, the kind of framing of Teddy Roosevelt and John Muir, and I love the cheeky way that he puts this. He kind of glosses this era as, let's preserve the land we stole from indigenous people. Let's not pave absolutely everything, okay? So this is kind of the era of national parks, right? That sort of era of conservation. In the 60s and 70s, Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, you have the formation of EPA, some really critical legislation, Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, all of these things. They challenged the worst of industrial pollution, but they often just recited these things in low-wealth BIPOC communities, right? At this time, the movement was very white, very middle class. It had a lot of blind spots that were harmful to people who did not look like us. And then he says, the era of environmentalism that we're in now is the era of investment. So this is from an article that he did back in 2008. You might remember Van Jones as like the green jobs czar in the first Obama administration. And I think that this, talking about this era of environmentalism is really relevant now with the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act. That was the big federal legislation that was passed that is bringing us a lot more tax incentives, and if you want to insulate your house, you can access a bunch of tax credits for it, right? Different solar programs are opening up, all of these kinds of things. So some of the opportunities of this investment era of the environmental movement that we are in now are the following, right? So I think the shift that his thinking helps us make is we get to maybe stop asking the question of how do we distribute environmental harms equally to all communities. Maybe we get to stop asking that question a little bit and instead pivot to how can we equitably distribute the benefits made possible by sustainability. And this is politically really important because it grows the number of people who have a stake in the outcome of these things, and it builds the broad coalition that we need to win a livable future, right? I think all of you who came to this event understand that we are not going to get to a livable future by the sum of our individual sustainable actions, but we have to build the power necessary to win that, right? This is a political battle, and a moral and a spiritual battle. So just some data points that back up kind of what he's saying. So this was from a study done by Tufts and UC Berkeley in 2019, but just pointing out some significant disparities in, for example, rooftop solar, right? Black majority neighborhoods have 69% less rooftop solar than those with no racial majority. And this is in census tracts where median household income is the same. So this is not fully even an income thing. Hispanic neighborhoods, 30% less, white majority having 21% more, right? Sometimes academics just tell us the things that we already intuitively know. This is an example of that. In the fall, who knows about the Michigan state energy legislation that was passed? Who's heard about that? Yeah, so a few folks in the room. So we have this blue trifecta. People are talking about, oh my gosh, it's going to be this amazing opportunity to pass energy legislation that we've needed, that we have not been able to do. And so we, 2 cheers for that, not 3 cheers, but maybe 2 cheers for that legislation. We got some good stuff. An 80% clean energy portfolio by 2035, 100% by 2040. The big asterisks are that clean includes some shady stuff like nuclear. And it also includes fossil fuel fired power plants that capture some of their emissions, right? The distributed generation solar cap, so that's what enables people to have solar on their home rooftops, for example. That was raised, but it wasn't eliminated. And there's a link if you want to read some more. But here, so our friends at the Michigan Environmental Justice Coalition have laid out some priorities, and those priorities are really not at all reflected in the legislation that we got, which includes fair compensation for outages. Right? So, who's had a power outage? Am I in the way? Yes. So, oh yeah, some folks in the room have had power outages. Me too. All the time, right? So our utilities know exactly how many power outages we're getting, but the system that's in place currently says, well, you can apply for an outage credit, right? We already know exactly when your outage was, but you can take the additional administrative step of applying for a credit, and then you will get like a whopping $35 to replace, the refrigerator full of food you lost, the medication that, whatever it is, right? Obviously insufficient. What didn't happen in this energy legislation was a rethinking of energy as a basic necessity, right? We could have done some affordability, income-based rates. There was not a requirement about cumulative impacts. So that's to say, if you've got a sort of polluting facility that is getting installed, right, the current regulatory framework says you just need to account for whatever this is producing when you make that determination about can this be cited here, rather than what's everything around it, right? The cumulative impact of all of the harmful industry that might be cited in, this one place, like the zip code 48217, for example. And some other provisions that are really important, right? And these things were basically ignored in the energy legislation. So, since Pastor Glass almost left our meeting, since we've kind of also been on this journey of figuring out how do we become a more inclusive and genuinely justice-oriented organizations, we have developed a couple programs that I wanted to share. So this kind of gets at how can you get involved? How can you take action? One of which we're calling Solar Solidarity. So on the right here, this is Pastor Glass. We installed solar at his church in the fall. And we did it by pooling impact lenders from our network. And we got 5 people to raise their hand and say, hey, I've got $5,000. I'm willing to lend it at a low interest rate. Pastor Glass gets solar, starts saving money immediately, and you can pay me back over the course of 10 years, right? So this was Michigan IPL's way of being like, how do we engage a supporter base that has a lot of folks who care deeply about climate action, and maybe they've got money, they don't really have a lot of relationships with people in environmental justice communities, but they care about it, or they could care about it if we let them know about what's going on. And so if this is something that might interest you, you can fill out this form and we'll let you know when we're doing the next project. We've also got climate conversations. So this is something that we're doing, a way of facilitating conversations with congregations to help folks turn towards the justice issues that are at the heart of climate. So what we'll do is we'll facilitate 2 conversations in your community, in your faith community, if you belong to one, and then we will support you in building a green team or a social action team or a climate justice team or whatever you want to call it, and we'll give you $1,000 to do your project. And it's an opportunity for you to consider, like, what does it look like for my community to pursue climate justice, right? Which might be something else than greening our building, right? It might have more of a justice component to it. We can support you with that. And that's all. I know we don't have a ton of time. I want to make sure Leah gets in, and we'll have time for conversation after we hear from Leah. So thanks.
There we go. Hello, can you hear me? Great job, Leah. So I'm here to talk to you about Habitat for Humanity, which kind of might seem like a weird space for us to be in the climate justice and talking about environmental impacts. How many of you know about Habitat for Humanity? Okay, great, love it. How many of you know that we do more than just build homes? Okay, awesome, even better. So I'm here to talk not only about the impacts that we're doing within the homes that we're building, but also what we are now calling our Healthy Homes campaign, which is part of our home improvement program, where we go in and help residents living in the neighborhoods we serve with critical projects and improvements to their homes. So back in 2019, when the foreclosure crisis happened, our affiliates switched from building homes to including neighborhood stabilization and revitalization. As part of that, we started working with community leaders in 3 Ypsilanti neighborhoods as part of our community development work. We wanted to do more than build homes in these communities that we're in. So we started to empower residents and asking what they needed. At that time, we also realized that a lot of the houses surrounding these homes we were building in these neighborhoods were built in the 1950s and really becoming aging stock and not very well maintained. According to Habitat International, homeowners with low incomes tend to own older homes or homes that are in relatively poor condition and in communities that have much more environmental pollutants than those neighboring communities. So we started our home improvement program to respond to these conditions and provide solutions for low to mid-income households that needed these critical home repairs. These repairs were mostly weatherization and energy efficient appliance upgrades, and that we started doing with hundreds of households that year. At this time, we also shifted our renovating homes as opposed to building new, which allowed us to produce more affordable home units than we ever had before. As part of that, we started including these environmentally friendly and energy efficient upgrades in these homes that we were renovating as well. We also realized there was a financial benefit of providing these environmental upgrades. Our energy efficient homes and home improvements not only are great for our environment, but also reduce utility bills for the people living there and provide solutions to costly home problems for those homeowners. We do things like put in a new furnace or put a new roof on. We'll insulate rim joists, and I will get into a little bit about that here in a moment. Our programs create a healthier financial future for homeowners and a healthy environment for the community. Our work also reduces harmful environmental factors like carbon monoxide, as well as improving the health and safety for homeowners, such as that working furnace or better insulation. Our programs, we create health benefits and healthy environments. According to studies, about 21% of childhood asthma cases are due to exposures from indoor moisture and mold in their homes. And children of households with low incomes suffer at asthma at twice the rate. Habitat International also says that Black households with low incomes live in more environmentally hazardous neighborhoods and have up to 4 times the average toxic concentration levels of an all-white neighborhood. This is a problem in our neighborhood. 32% of Ypsi Township is Black, compared to about 7% in Ann Arbor. So that's why a lot of the work we do is in Ypsi Township. Through our home improvement program, we started doing energy efficient modifications and upgrades, eco-friendly, and now Energy Star appliance replacements, and other sustainability projects. It's really whatever that home needs, we are coming in and we are going to do that for them. The results of these programs create a more sustainable future, not only for the homeowner, but the community. Typically, we build or serve residents that live in a 1,000 square foot home. It's 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, ranch. And most, as I said, had been built in the 1950s, with little improvements over the years, and have a basement or a crawl space. On average, households with our Habitat home improvements save an average of $200 to $400 a month on energy costs. Our Habitat homebuyers also save an average of $600 a month. Greenhouse gases are also reduced by over 1 metric ton in a year from our households. To improve energy efficiency and reduce the carbon footprint for the homeowners, our typical improvements are going to be mostly these that I'm going to outline here in a moment. And you guys can do these in your homes too, or you can obviously support us so we can do more of this. We do a lot of high efficiency furnace replacements, and that obviously reduces energy consumption. Our main goal through this program is to provide financial stability for low-income homeowners, but also to make sure that they're operating and their furnace is going to work and last. We replace furnaces with a 96% AFUE rating, which means that 96% of that fuel, if you're unfamiliar with furnace technology, as I was, is used to heat the home. With the second heat exchange, more exhaust gases are captured before being vented outside. This is a huge savings for households and a huge component to reducing the carbon footprint in the communities. We also replace water heaters with Energy Star models, so that greatly reduces the CO poisoning. Did you know that water heaters use about 20% of a home's energy? An Energy Star heater is 4 times more likely to use 70% less energy than the standard model. We also add attic insulation. Shocking to know, a lot of homes do not have attic insulation, and that can be a huge benefit within your home. We add attic insulation to an R49, which will increase the comfort and sustainable energy savings. Attic insulation reduces the need of heating and cooling, as well as reduces the emissions of pollutants. The R value, if you're unfamiliar, is the insulation's ability to resist heat traveling through it, and in places with extreme climates like Michigan, that's a huge deal. The higher the value, the better the insulating power. We also replace or add central air conditioning for these homes to improve indoor air quality. We replace or add central air with a 15 SEER rating, which measures that fuel efficiency as well. This means that it's a more affordable unit, but also It regulates temperatures in homes more efficiently, reduces humidity levels, and improves filtration for the homeowners too. We all thought AC was a benefit, but it's actually very good for health as well and our healthy environment. However, those ACs do require maintenance, and Habitat comes back to ensure that those homeowners that received our AC units are also maintaining their AC units as well. We also come in and insulate rim joists with air sealing, which eliminates air leaks and keeps moisture out. For home improvements, we use an R10 insulation and air seal to create a vapor barrier, which prevents moisture buildup within the home. Wood rot and mold growth can be a problem if rim joists are not protected, so it's very important to get those rim joists protected. We have done about 7,000 of these repairs and improvements to homes in our community. Now, we couldn't do it with our wonderful partners and supporters that do come and help. I do have a flyer at our table with a QR code. If you want to learn more, all of this is outlined there so you can look and see what to do to your home, but also on what you would support if you're willing to support our organization as well. So thank you. I think we'll open it up for questions. Leah wants to come back up here with me. Anybody? Yes, sir.
Does Habitat have plans to go to air source heat pumps?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Does Habitat for Humanity have plans to go to some kind of heat pump technology for the replacement project that you're?
That is a really good question. We've been exploring it. What we see the problem with the electric heat pumps is the cost to keep that running in the wintertime is a lot higher on their energy bill. And for the people we serve in low to mid-income communities, they're very focused on what those costs are going to be, not out of the picture. But we are continuing to try to figure out how we can best do that.
Hi, I'm State Senator Sue Schenck, and I worked really hard on that clean energy package. And I agree with what's not in it. And I also want to let you know that for the first time ever, in the bill that I negotiated and fought like hell for, environmental justice, communities, and justice considerations are included in language that governs the MPSC's behavior, and that hasn't been the case before. And that also the EGLE, the Environment, Great Lakes, Energy, Great Lakes and Environment, that department has to do a report on how the utilities construction to produce more power would affect environmental justice communities. It also provides more money for groups representing those communities to intervene in the cases. And I agree that those things that aren't in there, and we tried really hard to get them in and weren't able to because some of our colleagues were not willing to vote for it if it was in there. So there's still a lot of work to be done. Representative Morgan, who is sitting next to me, he has a bill to get some of that done. There are other bills in the Senate to get that done, and so we can use we would appreciate your continued advocacy on behalf of those efforts. Thanks.
Thanks for adding that. I want to say too, one of the things that I hear from Ann Arbor folks is like, well, we don't know how to do advocacy because our lawmakers already agree with us. And I think that's a challenge, right? But I think that this is the opportunity is for folks in Ann Arbor to really draft behind leaders of environmental justice movements and help echo and amplify their demands with your lawmakers. So I think that's a great opportunity for Ann Arbor folks.
I was wondering if you could share that slide with us somehow about things that were not done yet, or I'm not sure how to, I was just asking if we could share that slide of things that still need to be done.
Yeah, I'll share my presentation with the event organizers, and it has links, so you can check that out. I see a hand back there.
Thanks. Both really interesting presentations and very inspiring projects. So thank you for the work that you've been doing and continue to do. What I'm going to say, which is probably more of a statement than a question, I apologize, is that money talks. And so funding these projects is important. Funding the re-election campaigns of people who are behind these things, that's important. Funding the advocacy activities that have brought us to this point, these are all important. And that is something that people in higher wealth communities can do.
Amen. Thank you.
That's a very good point, especially one that we like to point out too. We do get government funding, and we do have vendors that work with Habitat and provide us discounts on the repairs I outlined and the improvement. But if you're really looking to improve our environment and make it sustainable, help us by donating to help us cover those costs for those repairs, so that we can have a better environment overall.
Hi, this question is for Leah with Habitat. Way back, Jimmy Carter told us all that Habitat for Humanity accepted volunteer labor. Do you all still do that?
Yes. Yep. Oh, it's a big one. Yes, we still use volunteers. We're building about 6 homes a year, and we use volunteers to build those homes. As part of I didn't outline this quite today, talking about my energy efficiency, but we do also do community work. We have community beautification days. We use volunteers to come and help with that as well as exterior projects that we do for a lot of the home improvement program residents we serve. We'll go to those homes and do yard cleanup and clean up gutter guards and help folks kind of maintain the outside of their home with volunteers as well.
Yeah, one of you raised the issue of you often hear people saying, well, why should I bother writing a letter to my representative, because they already agree with us. And being in Ann Arbor with the city government, with Debbie Dingell, with the state legislators who have been doing so much, that's something I personally feel, and I wonder, well, is that really worth it? Can you comment some more as to why you think it is worth it, and what kinds of letters? Give us some hints.
Yeah. So I think the question I'm hearing is like, well, when our lawmakers already agree with us, they're already pretty progressive, is it worth it to do that advocacy? I think it might be. Well, so here's a couple situations I can imagine, right? So there's a day of action that somebody is organizing, right? Folks are coming to Lansing, and people are going out in teams and they're meeting with lawmakers. I think maybe one opportunity there is you're joining a little team, perhaps with folks who have never visited a lawmaker before and they're a bit intimidated, right? And you have a personal relationship with your lawmaker, they're not that scary, and you can just add some weight to that conversation, add some support, right? That could be one thing, right? Another thing is I think the sad reality is that honestly most of our Dems out there, they're taking money from the utilities, they're taking money from fossil fuels, they need to be pushed as well, right? So I do not have the default position that our Democrats are working in our interests on these issues, right? They're approving the defense budget. This is a huge, carbon emissions and pollution related to our defense budget, and their Dems are rubber stamping it. So I think there's loads of room for us to push our lawmakers towards more progressive positions. I am very influenced by Noam Chomsky's position that we have one political party, the political party of big business, right? And it has members of our Democrats and our Republicans who are part of that party.
Yeah.
Hi, I just wanted to say the Sierra Club once or twice a year does a lobby day in Michigan, in Lansing, and they give training, they provide materials for you to read ahead of time. You meet with both Republicans and Democrats. So that's a great, you can go to sierraclub.org, get to the Michigan chapter, and you can find out about that. And then also the energy package was not something, a lot of people went out on a limb. A lot of people in swing districts went out on a limb to vote for it. So you should seek out the names of those people and support them financially. Names that come to mind are Jen Hill up in the UP and Lori Puchutsky, I think in Novi, but people like that, probably Sue Shink could give you some information about some suggestions for who to support.
Let's see, Rabbi Josh. Hand up.
I just wanted to add to Mark's question about the reaching out to representatives. I mean, you saw what I did in the sanctuary, and I knew that, like, Representative Dingell, she had already signed on to the bill in the last Congress. It had just changed numbers. It was the same bill, and there literally are 30,000 bills that go through Congress every year. She has a small staff. In particular, Congress representatives in Congress have small staffs. Senators have much larger staffs. They don't see everything, and she didn't get notified that what the new bill number was, and they had changed in her office. And she said to me afterwards, I think it just got lost in the shuffle. I mean, they need to hear from us, even when we know that they're likely going to stand with the bills that we want them to stand with. They need to hear from us saying thank you, and also by the way, you missed this one. That's how this work gets done. It builds power in Congress to get movement, and so maybe it won't happen this year in this Congress, but who knows what the next Congress looks like. So I would just say keep advocating, even with Dingell, even with our representatives here. Keep advocating. Don't stop. That is a one-way ticket to nowhere.
Thank you. One of the tools that states have to address climate justice issues is community solar. And my understanding is under the recent legislation that's still not allowed in Michigan. Are there efforts to bring that into the fold?
I think that's definitely a part of the conversation in the coalitions that we're a part of, and you're right. So what you're talking about, Jaron, I think is community-owned community solar, right? So this is where, right, you have a big solar installation, and it is actually owned by members of the community, and then, rather than spend $30,000 to put the solar panels on your roof and you alone benefit, you can pay a more modest, you can purchase a more modest share and benefit from a collectively owned solar installation. So that would be a huge leap forward in terms of bringing more folks in to be able to access the benefits of renewable energy. Absolutely. I'm not familiar with like a specific thing that you can sign on to now in support of that. They may be out there. Vote Solar is doing something. Denise, do you have something?
I'm gonna let the good senator speak to it.
Awesome. Okay, great. Yeah.
Thanks. So, two things. So, I'll start with the community solar. Jeff Irwin introduced bills to provide for community solar, and I just introduced some behind-the-meter selling of electricity to help the utilities shave their peak demand. So on the community solar, which is really important, and also on lifting the limit on rooftop solar, Jeff Irwin introduced bills, and they're just kind of sitting there. And so your advocacy would be really appreciated, and we always want to hear from you because it gives us power, it gives us steam to do the work, and also the governor needs to hear from you as well, because she is part of that there's three bodies in making a law: the House, the Senate, and also the governor. So she needs to hear from you, and we need your support. We can do the work on the inside, and you guys kind of hold us together from the outside. So don't underestimate your power. Thanks.
Hate to say this, but this is going to have to be the last question.
Wow, last question. Well, this is more a comment. Each one of our legislators is a person. They are working to meet the needs of their of the people who voted for them or those that didn't vote for them. If you're going in a restaurant and you have a bad meal, you don't tell the owner. But let's say you have a good meal. Sometimes it's nice. They hear primarily only the bad. Oh, you're a terrible restaurant, or you're a terrible whatever. Sometimes it's nice. These are human beings with whom we're dealing. Hey, that was a great meal, or I really appreciated how you fixed my car, or whatever. It's just the idea is sometimes it's reinforced. These are people who serve us. Maybe it'd be nice payback in a little different way. And that was just, I was thinking of with a weight person last night. She was very competent, very helpful, and it was just so pleasant. So we thank her. Well, obviously give her a big tip too, but that's beside the
Yeah, please maybe a final big hand. I know we could have asked more than one question. And that's the end of the breakout sessions, but there's more to come.